Hey guys, Rollout here with something a little special. Today we're going to be doing two things. First, we're going to open up that silver play button back there. Second, a couple months ago I asked you to post questions in the comments, and we're going to be answering some of those. I guess you could consider this a 100,000 subscriber celebration, but first things first, let's do a quick unboxing. So I was a smart boy, and I've cut the tape off camera so I'm not fiddling around with a knife. It is just a dubious black box. They shipped it in this. It's got the YouTube logo on it, and there's a pull tab down here. So let's see if we can get any of this in frame. And it is just a box of foam. The time is now to see if I've been pranked. It is just a box of paper. Congratulations on your subscriber milestone. This award was inspected and packaged with great care by Rick. Thanks, Rick. Oof. And then we got another piece of paper with a lot more words. Blah, 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 blah. Yours sincerely, Susan. Thanks, Susan. There is going to be dust and hair on this immediately. But there she is. Ooh. A little snack for later. It's the good stuff, too. Is this, no, it is not sealed at all. And there it is. Very shiny. I don't know what this is made out of. It looks metal plated. I don't think the whole thing is metal. It's got like felt on the back. You can mount it with these. I'm gonna be honest, I do kind of miss the old style of play button where it was in a frame and you could take the actual button out of it. I wouldn't do that, but like I feel that gave you more options, whereas this is just a plaque. Like, it's a really nice looking plaque. It's got the mirror finish on it, already covered in dust. But you can kind of see yourself in it, so it's got that whole broadcast yourself message. But yeah, it looks really nice. I don't know where I'm going to put it. There's not a whole lot of wall space in here. Maybe above my light box back there. I was thinking maybe on my shelf with all the Transformers there. For now, I think I'm just going to set it up back here. I think that should be fine. And let's answer some questions. So I'm going to be reading these off of my phone, and just to streamline things, I won't be mentioning the username of every single person who asked one of these questions. Instead, I will be crediting those people in the description if you are interested. Another thing I want to mention is that I like to talk a lot, so this is probably going to go on for quite some time. You know what you're getting into. Okay, question number 1. What was your first Lego set? We're starting at the beginning. So, I was actually playing with Lego for a long time before I got my own sets. When I was around 4 years old, it seemed like all of my neighborhood friends were just a little bit older than I was, so all of them had Lego before I did. And whenever I went over to their houses for play dates and things like that, I would play with their sets. They had the castles and the ninjas and the Alpha Team and Rock Raiders, all of that cool stuff that I got to play with. My sister is a little bit older than I am, and she was actually into Lego before I was. She went through this phase where she was really fascinated by archaeology, and it seemed like she was watching the Indiana Jones movies every single day, and so naturally she was into the Johnny Thunder theme, and she had a ton of those sets that I could play with as well. I think I actually got my own first set on my 5th birthday. That was my first birthday party where I invited friends over, And, of course, all of my friends that had Lego gifted me Lego. And so I got a bunch of sets on that day, but I think the first one I unboxed and opened was this tiny little police patrol vehicle. It was like a 4-wheel drive Rover and a policeman minifigure. It was super simple. It's like baby's first Lego set material. It's kind of boring, it's kind of straightforward, but yeah, that was my first Lego set, as far as I can remember. Next question, how did you come into your large collection of Lego, and is there anywhere you can buy them in bulk? So throughout my childhood, I didn't have a whole lot of toys that weren't Lego. I didn't have many action figures or video games. I actually didn't have any pets. Instead, all of that sort of budget went towards family vacations. My parents strongly supported experiences and creativity, and so we went to Disneyland several times, we went to Legoland several times, and inevitably, on those trips, I always came back with some Lego. I got Lego for birthdays and Christmases. Eventually, my sister grew out of her collection and gifted me all of her bricks, and before long, I just had buckets and buckets full of this stuff. And in the early days of my channel, that's what I was working with. So it is possible to make Lego Transformers just by collecting sets alone. However, in about 2010, I think, my Lego building life changed when I discovered a local store called Bricks and Minifigs. This is a chain of third-party Lego resale stores. They have old sets, they have new sets, they have individual minifigures, and most importantly, they have tables and tables of bulk. Ever since I started going there, my building style got a whole lot more sophisticated. I could color coordinate my creations. I could use parts that I never had access to before, that I had never seen before, and things just got a whole lot more interesting. Now, I understand that not everybody has a store like this, and it is a little bit of an advantage. I will put a link in the description. You can go to the website. They have a store locator. If you don't have a Bricks and Minifigs in your area, it is possible you have a store that is similar, because Bricks and Minifigs is not the only Lego resale store chain. Of course, the next best thing is Bricklink. Now, I know a lot of people don't really like using Bricklink. I know a lot of parents are a little bit dubious of the service, because it's sort of like eBay or Amazon, but just slightly more sketchy on the surface, because I feel it's more personal. You're just sort of giving your PayPal information to a person and hoping you get Lego in return. I vouch for it. I love the service and I use it almost daily. Not only as a marketplace, but just as a database. There's so much information there. You can look up sets, you can find set inventories, instructions, find out what year things came out, find out piece variants. All sorts of stuff can be learned from Bricklink, and if you do not know how to use the Bricklink search engine, I strongly recommend you learn, because that is another thing that will change your life. I cannot imagine being a Lego builder these days without Bricklink, and that is where I get most of my pieces. What was your first Lego build? So I don't know the real answer to this. Probably a car or a spaceship or a castle or something generic like that. It's hard to say. But instead, I will answer this question by telling you about my first Lego Transformer. So there was a good several years where I more or less put away my Lego system bricks and was head over heels into exclusively Bionicle. This was in the early days of Bionicle, 2002, 2003-ish. I remember watching Beast Machines reruns on TV. I remember specifically going over to a cousin's house who had a room full of Beast Wars toys, and I thought it was incredible. And so I thought to myself, I don't have any Transformers, but I've got all of these Bionicle pieces. I'm going to try building something a little bit like Cheetor out of what I've got. And so I built a lion, tiger, cheetah-like Transformer, and I can assure you that it probably wasn't very good, but I was really proud of it, and I showed everybody that would look at it. I showed my parents, my sister, all of my friends. In fact, I remember playing with it outside, and just this like random high schooler walked by, and I was like, dude, check out this thing I built. And she was like, okay. And that was that. So from a very early age, I was building Lego Transformers, and I was showing them to people, whether they would listen or not. So I guess what I'm doing today was just destiny. Next, how did you start YouTube? So I have been watching YouTube videos for as long as the website has been around. I discovered it before any of my friends did. In elementary school, we were all playing RuneScape. And so I stumbled across a lot of stupid RuneScape videos, and I wanted to show them to my friends. And I remember going to school one day and telling them to go to youtube.com and watch this video, and all of them were like, I don't know what that is. And so after school, they checked it out. They came back the next day and were like, I don't know, man. It's like this sketchy website that's telling me to broadcast myself. And I'm like, yep, no, that's it. It's not sketchy. Just watch the stupid RuneScape videos. Eventually, I was starting to make my own stupid RuneScape videos using Hypercam. This is an old, lost channel. I literally don't think it exists anymore. You are free to look it up if you want. It was called something edgy, but it is where my username now kind of came from. I think it was IXRollOutIX. I don't know what that means. It's nonsense, but that's what it was. And the IXs didn't really mean anything. It is the Roman numeral for 9, but it is essentially just the edgier equivalent of random numbers at the end of a name. In hindsight, since it was entirely for aesthetic, it probably should have been IX something something XI, but I really wasn't thinking that far. Then, when I made this channel, I kind of wanted some kind of continuity for some reason, so I kept the IXs, and I kept the name that started with an R, and that's how you got Rollout. So if you were curious about that, that is the story from the mind of an elementary school student. In middle school, that's when I started getting into Transformers again. The first Transformers movie had just come out. It was kind of the middle period between the first and second movie, so there was hype surrounding the sequel. And one summer, I just became fascinated with Transformer toy reviews on YouTube. I was always the kind of person who would much rather talk about a thing than myself, just as a conversation starter. So talking about a toy was fascinating to me, and it's something that I really wanted to do, but I didn't have a whole lot of toys, I didn't have a whole lot of subject matter, and I didn't have the budget to buy any. So I decided to build them myself. I was gonna build my own Transformers because I discovered some YouTube channels that were doing exactly that. Specifically, one that is. He was my biggest inspiration. If you saw the recent Transformer I did called Solar Stream, that is based off of one of his original creations. And he sort of kickstarted the whole thing with his style. It was very laid back, it was a little bit awkward, but it was always very inspiring. He always showed off these creations as if they were examples. He showed you how to do some things and said, hey, you can do this yourself, but better. And so I gave it a shot. And in those early days, like I said, I kind of wanted to be a toy reviewer. So in a way, I was almost a wannabe toy designer. I was hitting the third-party Transformer scene before that was really even a thing. I was making my own Transformers and showing them off. And then it blossomed into this hobby that persists today. I do have a second channel where occasionally I will review toys, so I guess that dream came true. But this is my main thing now, and it all started from there. When building a LEGO Transformer, do you focus more on the vehicle mode or the robot mode? So this answer might be a little bit confusing, but it's actually neither. And you might not know what I'm talking about if you've never built a LEGO Transformer before, but I actually start with the transformation. More accurately, I build the whole thing based on a transformation mechanic. More often than not, I will start by just kind of putting hinges and bricks that have synergy with one another together until I essentially have two solid states. I have a shapeless mass that can convert from one thing into another thing. There isn't really a defined robot mode or a vehicle mode at this point. It is just something that goes from one mode to another. And then I will add pieces and the shapes will sort of start to form, either a robot mode or a vehicle mode, and then as I add to each one, I will try and connect them together, transforming it back and forth, trying to make it work. But almost every single Transformer I build is based around one kind of clever puzzle mechanic that I've thought of. A way to kind of cheat the shapes so that it looks one way in one mode and another way in the other mode. And this is an unconventional way of doing things because I know plenty of people who kind of plan out their process a little bit more. They draw pictures, they have a little bit of a better idea of the vehicle or the robot they want going into it. And sometimes that is how I do things. Of course, when I am building an established character like Bumblebee or Megatron, I've got a little bit more of an idea of what I want them to look like in the end, but even in those cases, it is based on some kind of transformation mechanic. In the case of Megatron, it was his hips kind of splitting apart so that the tank is wider than his robot mode. In Bumblebee's case, it was the hood becoming his wings and having the faux chest. For auxiliary, it was the tethers and him kind of splitting apart and recombining. But at the time, I didn't know if he was going to be like a horse-drawn carriage or what. He ended up being an ox pulling a cart. All of my original Transformers start as nothing. They just start as me putting pieces together and eventually a character, a shape, an alt mode forms from that. And often, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't really know how it happens. I just kind of turn my brain off, put the pieces together, work things out, and before long I have something built. It's a little bit of a Zen moment, and I think it just comes from experience. I've been doing this for 10 years, and sometimes you gotta make some really bad Transformers before you can make some good ones. Why don't you build large-scale Transformers? There are many different reasons for this, and I'll start by saying that there are a lot of different Transformer builders out there, and everyone sort of has their niche. And while it's true that I started building Lego Transformers as a substitute for the toys that I never had, and originally I was trying to get them as close to the action figures that I could, that's not really what I go for anymore. And if you're looking for something like that, you're looking for Lego Transformers that function and play a little bit more like the actual action figures, then you can look towards Mindbender or Boys at the Most Toys. They have that niche covered. My niche is a little bit different. I don't pretend that I am designing toys anymore. Instead, I am designing complicated little finger puzzles that require dexterity to transform and that hopefully surprise the viewer in some way. The fact that I've been making videos for almost as long as I've been building Lego Transformers entirely informs the way that they're designed. I think the typical car Transformer is boring. I think when you know where all the parts are going to come from, it is less interesting. When the chest comes from the front of the car, the arms come from the sides, the legs come from the back, and the head flips out. No matter how competently built that Transformer is, I just think it's boring. It can be super solid and articulate, it can have plenty of features in vehicle mode, house a minifigure, it can roll. But if the transformation isn't interesting, I'm less inclined to watch that video, because to me, the display of engineering is the most impressive part. That's what I stick around for. And I think when you build at a larger scale, it is harder to capture that surprise factor. Because I think at a larger scale, it requires more pre-planning, and that means, drawing things out, deciding where all the parts are going to come from, and I'm afraid I'm going to fall into a niche where it just becomes too predictable. When I start putting pieces together and I don't really know where it's going, or I surprise myself, that is a good indication that it may surprise the viewer. And that's what I go for. I want to make this entertaining video. And as long as I can transform it on camera without it falling apart, that's good enough for me. That does mean it's a little bit inaccessible to someone following my instructions. You do need this level of know-how and dexterity to transform my Transformers, more so than you need know-how to transform an action figure right out of the box. Now, another reason why I like to build at a small scale is because, frankly, I just like the aesthetic of it. I do think it is just as impressive to build as small as possible as it is to build as large as possible, but aesthetically, I think the small stuff ends up looking a little bit better because I like to go for a very clean approach. I don't like a whole lot of studs. I like very blocky color schemes, and that is simply easier to do at a small scale because once you get those flat surfaces large enough, to me, it just looks sloppy, and that's not the sort of thing I like. Finally, I just think the way I design Transformers informs the way they look and the size that I build them at. To be honest, I am a bit impatient. I design Transformers based on a transformation mechanic, and building at a large scale requires more pieces to be put together before you start to see those shapes take place, before you start to see a product. And when I can just put a few pieces together and have that mechanic visualized, that is so much more satisfying to me. It means that the Transformer gets done a whole lot quicker, and it means that, for lack of a better term, the post-processing gets more attention. When I build a Transformer, it usually only takes a day or two to get the basic idea, the basic shape done, but then it sits on my desk for sometimes an entire month. I just stare at it, I tweak it, there's a lot of attention to detail and a lot of quality control, and if I build at a large scale, that just takes so much more time. I like the immediacy that small scale provides, I like the clever ideas that are available to me at such a small scale, and I just like the way it looks aesthetically better than I like those big, impressive, large-scale Transformers. Who is your favorite Transformer you've built? Let's see. I really like Auxiliary. I think his transformation is super inspired. I really like the way both of his modes look, but that transformation is just a pain in the neck to accomplish, and I think for that reason, he's probably not my favorite. I really like Solarstream. I love the way he looks in both modes. I think the transformation is a lot of fun. However, it does rely on a connection that is extremely finicky, and at this point in time, there isn't really a way to design it any differently. There isn't a piece that exists to make that more solid, and so until that happens, he probably isn't my favorite. I think the most competently designed Transformer that I've ever built is Movie Bumblebee. He's the whole package. He's got a lot of expression and articulation in robot mode. He has a great looking vehicle mode. The transformation is a lot of fun. It's complicated, and most importantly of all, it's intuitive. It's quite easy to transform him without anything falling apart, and I think that's a success. But ultimately, I still think my favorite Transformer is Quickstop. He's got that sentimental value, having been based on the first Transformer I filmed. I love the way he looks in robot mode, his silhouette, his posture. I like that he rolls. I like how fun he is to play with as a vehicle. But most importantly, I just think he is extremely fun to transform. He is the most fun Transformer that I have built. And when I prioritize transformation so much, that is very important to me. Yes, he does parts form a little bit, but that is not without intention and purpose. And there's just so many tactile movements and swivels and mass shifting. Yes, he is based on my first Transformer, but that is not the only reason he is my mascot. He's just a lot of fun, and like I said, probably my favorite Transformer to this day. Is there a Transformer you would like to build but can't, and what is the reason why? For the longest time, this was Movie Bumblebee. I just found it difficult to wrap my head around that design at such a small scale until LEGO came out with all of these game-changing pieces which suddenly made it possible. Right now, my current challenge is that I would like to build a new Optimus Prime. I agree that my current Optimus is a little bit outdated. I still think he is acceptable, he looks good, but when he stands next to Megatron, Bumblebee, and Soundwave, his parts usage is a little bit archaic, and I just feel like with my current skill set, I could do better. The issue is, I still want to base him off of Movie Prime to kind of keep that aesthetic with the other three, but I have a hard time visualizing that version of Optimus in any other way, because I've had him built the same way for so long. So my thought is that I'm going to have to base him off of another design. I'm thinking I want to build an Evasion Mode Optimus Prime or a Bumblebee movie Optimus Prime. The issue is that for years I have tried to make another G1 Optimus Prime and failed, and that's a pretty similar design, so I think I'm going to have to do something a little bit clever. I think I'm going to have to think in the same way that I thought about Bumblebee and cheat a little bit. But right now I'm not entirely certain all of the pieces I would like to use come in the colors I want to use them in, so we're going to have to wait and see. I think we're going to start wrapping things up with one more question. I wanted to answer more in this video, but things are already getting pretty long, and my voice is already starting to strain a little bit, so forgive me for that. Last question. Were there any Transformers you built that you never made a video about? There have been plenty. In the early days, predating the original Quick Stop, I actually built a few Transformers that I just didn't think were good enough to debut with. One of them basically amounted to a robot that laid down and pointed his feet, and that was considered a spaceship. There was another one which was a little bit larger than the typical Transformer I build these days, and he transformed into a roadster, but you had to take his arms off, and that was kind of a no-go. A little bit later, I had this great idea for a Zamboni machine that transformed into a hockey player, and his name was Slapshot. And I still love that idea. I'd like to repurpose it, but trust me, that Transformer wasn't very good, and I never made a video. There was this other kind of non-distinct horned animal. It was probably the worst Transformer I have ever built. It looked terrible. It was extremely over-designed. I actually filmed a video, but it never saw the light of day because I was so ashamed. It's probably a good thing you'll never see it. There's probably a few others I'm not thinking of, but the only other one of note was actually fairly recently. And I know that I'm going to open the floodgates just by mentioning this, and all of you are going to beg to see it. But here goes. Before I built Soundwave, I wanted to build a fourth movie Transformer to accompany Bumblebee. And so naturally, I thought about building a barricade. Because let's face it, in that first movie, he is essentially discount Soundwave. I actually prototyped a fully functioning barricade. 2 modes, transformation. I think it looked pretty good, but I could not get it to transform without it crumbling to pieces. As much as I tried to fix that design, I just didn't think it was salvageable, and so I gave up, scrapped it, and built Soundwave instead. See, this is why I want to bring back Builder's Block and make it a weekly show, so that no matter what I build, it is documented in some way. Even if I scrap an idea like this, you still see it. It is still worth something and maybe inspiration to someone else. Maybe I will rebuild that barricade just to show you the problems I had with it. Maybe I will attempt another barricade someday, but who knows? Like, comment, subscribe to find out. Hey, okay. Questions done. I am tired. With all of that said and done, thank you guys for sticking around for 100,000 subscribers, for 10 years of continued support. We've certainly come a long way since this guy. Until next time, this has been Rollout, signing off.